November 1940, in Toledo, Ohio, the Willys Overland factory accomplished what seemed an impossible task. In just 75 days, the company's engineers designed, built, and delivered 2 military vehicle prototypes to the U.S. Army. These 2 vehicles were named the Quad, based on their 4-wheel drive system, a novel and promising feature at the time. With a compact, boxy appearance and extremely utilitarian design, there was nothing to suggest that these vehicles would become some of the most coveted military machines in history. Initially, when photos of the first Jeep prototypes reached German intelligence officers at the end of 1941, their reaction was indifference and disdain. The vehicles looked crude, with no doors, fold-flat windshields, simple stamped steel bodies with exposed bolts, and virtually no protection against the weather or battlefield conditions. To German military planners, who had spent years developing the Volkswagen Kübelwagen, the Quad seemed amateurish, a hastily assembled vehicle lacking the refinement they expected from a modern military vehicle. An intelligence report from early 1942 described the vehicle as seemingly cobbled together, lacking the technical sophistication the Germans considered standard. They were fully confident that their own light vehicles, designed by Ferdinand Porsche and based on Hitler's People's Car, were superior. The Kübelwagen was lighter than the early Jeep prototypes, had a flat underbody to glide over obstacles, and, even with only rear-wheel drive, performed well in tests. German engineers believed their approach was optimal and considered the Americans' complex 4-wheel drive system a waste of resources. However, this belief would soon prove to be a grave mistake. The American Jeep was not a makeshift or compromised vehicle hastily assembled. It was the result of a rigorous, competitive process, painful testing, and ruthless refinement. In June 1940, the U.S. Army issued one of the strictest procurement requests in automotive history. They wanted a quarter-ton reconnaissance vehicle that could carry 3 people with equipment, traverse any terrain, be simple enough for anyone to drive, durable enough for combat environments, and light enough for 4 soldiers to lift if stuck. The specifications were extremely precise. A wheelbase no longer than 80 inches, height no more than 40 inches, weight under 300 pounds, 4-wheel drive capable of climbing a 60% grade, fording depth of 18 inches, and delivery of the first prototype within 49 days of contract signing. Most automakers declined to participate, but 3 companies accepted the challenge. American Bantam Car Company, a small firm in Butler, Pennsylvania that had built mini-cars, Willys Overland, and Ford Motor Company. Bantam surprised everyone by delivering the first prototype on schedule on September 23, 1940, with a vehicle named the Blitz Buggy, which performed very well in initial tests. However, the Army was concerned about the small company's ability to mass produce, as they had only built 200 vehicles in 1939. As a result, the Army invited Willys and Ford to study Bantam's design and submit their own improved proposals. The result was 3 competing prototypes, each with unique strengths, tested rigorously from late 1940 to early 1941. Bantam pioneered the overall layout. Willys contributed the powerful Go Devil engine producing 60 horsepower, and Ford refined the body design with a flat hood and integrated headlights. In July 1941, the Army chose Willys as the primary contractor, but the final design incorporated the best improvements from all 3 companies, and Ford also produced vehicles to the same specifications. When the Willys MB and Ford GPW went into production in November 1941, just weeks before Pearl Harbor, the world saw a completely new type of vehicle. The MB and GPW had identical specifications, 132 inches long, 62 inches wide, 72 inches tall with the windshield raised, weighing 2,160 pounds, powered by a 134 cubic inch Go Devil engine producing 60 horsepower at 4,000 RPM, with a top speed of about 60 mph on roads, and 8 3/4-inch ground clearance for terrain impassable to ordinary vehicles. The 4-wheel drive system with a 2-range transfer case could be engaged via a simple floor lever, and remarkably, the vehicle could be maintained in the field using basic tools. The engine prioritized durability over precision, with wider tolerances than civilian vehicles, allowing for reliable operation under harsh combat conditions, and parts between Willys and Ford were fully interchangeable. A mechanic could take components from any Jeep to repair another. The name Jeep originated either from the phonetic pronunciation of GP, general purpose, or from Eugene the Jeep in the Popeye comic strip, symbolizing the vehicle's ability to go anywhere and do anything. Vehicle testers in 1941 began calling them Jeeps, and the name quickly caught on when a Washington Daily News reporter test drove one and wrote an article in February 1941. Willys recognized its commercial potential and registered the trademark in 1943, though soldiers had been using the name for 2 years prior. In summary, the Jeep was not born of chance or luck, but through an extremely rigorous and competitive development process, combining intelligent design, harsh testing, and mass production capability. It laid the foundation for one of the greatest military vehicles in history, overcoming initial skepticism from both competitors and enemies alike. When the first Jeeps arrived in combat zones in early 1942, the Germans remained skeptical, although intelligence officers began noting some advantages. The first direct encounter between German forces and American Jeeps occurred in North Africa in late 1942, during Operation Torch, when Allied forces landed in French North Africa. Thousands of Jeeps went ashore with the invading forces, and German and Italian troops saw firsthand the vehicles that the Americans were mass-producing. Initial intelligence reports noted that the Jeep had good speed and impressive off-road capability, but criticized its high fuel consumption, limited protection, and vulnerability to mines and small arms fire. Some reports describe the Americans as possessing an almost limitless number of vehicles, interpreting this as wasteful production rather than practical necessity. Comparisons with the German Kübelwagen showed that while the German vehicle had similar mobility, it had only half the power and a simpler mechanism. At the German base in Tunisia, officers inspecting a captured Jeep in January 1943 found obvious shortcomings: an exposed engine compartment vulnerable to mud and debris, a canvas top that offered almost no protection against shrapnel, a fuel tank located directly under the driver's seat as a potential hazard, and a simple 3-speed transmission lacking the sophistication of German vehicles. However, more concerning observations emerged regarding the Jeep's power-to-weight ratio. With 60 horsepower for 2,100 pounds, it could accelerate faster than most German light vehicles, and the four-wheel drive system performed perfectly even in deep sand. Most importantly, the Germans realized that the U.S. was producing vehicles at a massive rate. Captured documents revealed that Willys and Ford could build a new Jeep in as little as 90 seconds at peak production, a fact German intelligence had initially doubted. By early 1943, the U.S. had produced over 177,000 Jeeps, while total German light vehicle production barely exceeded 50,000. This created a massive disparity in industrial capability. If the U.S. could mass-produce reconnaissance vehicles at this scale, tanks, artillery, and aircraft could similarly be manufactured in overwhelming numbers, far surpassing German capacity. The first reports of German forces deliberately capturing American Jeeps came from Tunisia in March 1943. After the Battle of Kasserine Pass, when the Germans initially pushed back American forces but ultimately had to retreat, Wehrmacht units took every operational Jeep. Post-battle reports indicated that the captured Jeeps became invaluable reconnaissance and command vehicles. As the North African campaign continued, challenging terrain, rocky mountains, deep sand, and damaged coastal roads exposed the limitations of German vehicles. Although the Kübelwagen was cleverly designed, it lacked the power to climb slopes fully loaded, resulting in significant speed reduction under battlefield conditions. In contrast, American Jeeps seemed built for these challenges. Their powerful engines pulled through terrain where Kübelwagens got stuck. The four-wheel drive maintained traction in sand and mud, and importantly, they came with a huge stock of spare parts. The U.S. logistical system was so efficient that German mechanics could maintain captured Jeeps without difficulty, provided they had access to American spare parts. For example, Oberst Wolfgang Müller, commander of a reconnaissance battalion in Tunisia, recorded in April 1943 that he captured 6 American Jeeps and immediately put them into service. Within 2 weeks, he requested to replace all his German vehicles with Jeeps because they were faster, more reliable, and easier to maintain. When his request was denied due to fuel concerns, Müller noted that the Kübelwagen consumed almost the same amount of fuel but covered only half the distance. By May 1943, Axis forces collapsed in North Africa, with about 250,000 German and Italian soldiers surrendering, leaving behind hundreds of American jeeps in operation. Allied intelligence officers were astonished when cataloging the abandoned equipment, and interrogations revealed that when given a choice between a Kübelwagen and an American jeep, most German soldiers preferred the jeep. By mid-1943, as jeep production accelerated, reports from the Italian front in September showed continued superiority. During the Salerno landings, thousands of jeeps were brought ashore by U.S. and British forces, giving mobility dominance over the Germans. In southern Italy's rugged terrain, where roads were sparse and conditions harsh, American jeeps proved overwhelmingly effective. German forces struggled to establish defenses as jeeps maneuvered along routes inaccessible to heavier vehicles, and U.S. reconnaissance units were nearly impossible to surprise. Each American regiment had around 145 jeeps, providing mobility and flexibility that German officers could only dream of. German units often had only a few command vehicles or motorcycles, while their opponents had entire fleets of jeeps for rapid troop deployment, casualty transport, supply delivery, and mobile communications. American jeeps were also converted into ambulances, allowing wounded soldiers to reach hospitals in minutes instead of hours, impressing captured German officers and medical personnel with the speed of casualty evacuation. From December 1943, senior officers such as General Lieutenant Friedrich Schultz acknowledged that American jeeps were the most coveted equipment to capture, valued higher than any other U.S. gear. By early 1944, special maintenance teams were established to service captured jeeps, and fuel was prioritized for them despite higher consumption than Kübelwagens. The reason was simple. One jeep could perform reconnaissance requiring 2 or 3 German vehicles thanks to speed, range, and off-road capability. Its value far outweighed its higher fuel usage. German units using captured jeeps reported markedly improved tactical mobility, penetrating Allied lines faster and farther than with German vehicles. The four-wheel drive allowed operations in weather and terrain that would trap German vehicles, providing significant intelligence advantage. A German reconnaissance team in an American jeep could impersonate U.S. forces from a distance, approaching Allied positions before detection. The mechanical reliability and simple design meant even inexperienced mechanics could repair them in the field, reducing the risk of breakdowns during critical missions. Initially, when photos of the American Jeep prototypes reached German intelligence in late 1941, their reaction was one of disdain and skepticism. The small, boxy utilitarian vehicle bore little resemblance to what German engineers expected from a modern military vehicle. With no doors, a fold-down windshield, a simple stamped steel body with exposed bolts, and minimal protection against weather or fire, the Jeep appeared to be an amateurish, hastily assembled product. German military planners who had spent years developing the Volkswagen Kübelwagen designed by Ferdinand Porsche were confident that their vehicles were mechanically superior and more mobile. They believed there was no need for a complex four-wheel drive system. Their clever engineering would achieve similar results with simpler mechanics. An intelligence report from early 1942 even described the Jeep as a makeshift vehicle, lacking the technical sophistication expected of modern military automobiles. German confidence initially rested on the Kübelwagen, which was lighter than the early Jeep prototypes, had a flat underbody for clearing obstacles, and performed well even with rear-wheel drive alone. During factory tests, the Kübelwagen achieved remarkable results, reinforcing the belief among German engineers that resources for four-wheel drive were unnecessary. However, this assessment was quickly proven wrong once the Jeep appeared on the battlefield. The Jeep was not a rushed product. It was the result of a fiercely competitive process, rigorous testing, and continuous refinement. In June 1940, the U.S. Army issued one of the most challenging procurement requirements in automotive history: a quarter-ton reconnaissance vehicle capable of carrying 3 personnel with equipment, traversing any terrain, easy to drive, durable enough to withstand combat conditions, and light enough for 4 soldiers to lift if stuck. The technical specifications were extremely detailed: wheelbase no longer than 80 inches, height no more than 40 inches, weight under 1/300 pounds, four-wheel drive capable of a 60% grade and 18-inch fording depth. The first prototype was required within just 49 days, leading many automakers to decline participation. Only 3 companies accepted the challenge: Bantam Car Company, Willys Overland, and Ford Bantam, a small Pennsylvania firm, surprised everyone by delivering the first prototype on schedule. September 23, 1940, Bantam's Blitz buggy performed well in initial tests. But the Army worried about mass production capability, as Bantam had only built 200 cars in 1939. Consequently, Willys Overland and Ford were invited to study Bantam's design and submit improved versions. Willys contributed the powerful 60-horsepower Go Devil engine, while Ford refined the body design with the signature flat hood and integrated headlights. By July 1941, the Army selected Willys as the primary contractor, but the final design incorporated the best features of all 3 companies, with Ford also producing identical vehicles. The Willys MB and Ford GPW were introduced in November 1941, just weeks before the Pearl Harbor attack, with standardized specifications: 132 inches long, 62 inches wide, 72 inches high with the windshield up, weighing 2,160 pounds. The 134 cubic inch Go Devil engine produced 60 horsepower at 4,000 RPM, with a top speed of nearly 60 mph on roads and 8 3/4-inch ground clearance for difficult terrain. The four-wheel drive system with a 2-range transfer case could be engaged or disengaged via a simple floor lever. Remarkably, the Jeep could be maintained in the field using basic tools. The engine was designed for durability rather than precision, increasing reliability in combat, and parts between Willys and Ford were interchangeable, allowing any mechanic to repair a Jeep using available components. The name Jeep originated from the abbreviation GP, General Purpose, or Government Procurement, though it may also have been influenced by Eugene the Jeep from the Popeye comic strip. Soldiers testing the vehicles in 1941 began calling them Jeeps, and when a journalist asked the name in February, the driver replied, "It's a Jeep." Willys recognized the commercial potential and registered the trademark in 1943, though soldiers had been using the name for 2 years prior. General George Marshall, Chief of Staff of the U.S. Army, called the Jeep America's greatest contribution to modern warfare, and journalist Ernie Pyle described it as faithful as a dog, strong as a mule, and agile as a goat. When the first Jeeps reached the North African battlefield, Germany remained skeptical. Early 1943 intelligence reports noted the Jeep's speed and off-road ability but complained about fuel consumption, limited protection, and vulnerability. However, German officers soon realized a concerning fact. The Americans were producing vehicles in massive quantities, and captured Jeeps had high tactical value. Oberst Müller in Tunisia reported that 6 captured Jeeps performed better than his German vehicles, and his request to replace all German vehicles with Jeeps was denied due to fuel concerns. As U.S. production increased, the Jeep's impact became more apparent. During the 1943 Salerno campaign, thousands of Jeeps went ashore, allowing Allied forces to move quickly across rugged terrain with poor roads, overwhelming the Germans. The combination of a powerful engine, four-wheel drive, standardized parts, and easy field maintenance made the American Jeep superior to the Kübelwagen and other German vehicles. These vehicles not only moved quickly and climbed slopes effectively, but also maintained operational readiness thanks to a vast supply of spare parts. German officers realized that, when given a choice, captured Jeeps were always preferred over German vehicles. This demonstrated the exceptional effectiveness of American design. From initial skepticism, Germany was gradually convinced of the Jeep's combat capability and versatility, and recognized that their technical advantages could not compensate for America's superior production and logistics. The Jeep became a symbol of practical design, powerful performance, and mass production strategy, forcing Germany to acknowledge that they could not compete in the light strategic vehicle category for the rest of the war. One of the decisive factors behind the Jeep's battlefield dominance was the United States' enormous production capacity and strategic efficiency. While Germany was still preliminarily evaluating the first Jeeps with skepticism, the U.S. had already launched an extraordinary production plan, transforming the Jeep from a small reconnaissance vehicle into a symbol of industrial power. Willys and Ford, along with hundreds of parts suppliers across 32 states, created an unprecedented manufacturing and assembly network, where every component, from engines, transmissions, and drive shafts to body panels, was standardized and could be assembled at any factory. This strategy ensured that every Jeep leaving the line used interchangeable components, making maintenance and repairs quick and simple even in the field. By the end of 1943, total Jeep production had surpassed 360,000 units, and at the 1944 peak, more than 15,000 were produced each month, averaging roughly 500 vehicles per day. Assembly time for a Jeep from raw materials to finished vehicle at Willys' Toledo plant took less than 3 hours. Production processes were continually improved through experience, automation, and assembly line optimization, reducing labor required per vehicle by nearly 40% compared to early 1941. The cost per Jeep dropped from $738.74 to around $600, meaning the U.S. produced quickly and efficiently, directly contrasting with Germany, where vehicle output declined, costs rose, and labor efficiency dropped due to Allied bombing and shortages of strategic materials. Standardization and mass production created an unprecedented strategic advantage. Not only were all U.S. divisions fully equipped with Jeeps, but large numbers were supplied to allies under Lend-Lease, thousands to Britain, tens of thousands to the Soviet Union, and complete equipment of Free French forces, including Jeeps. Germany faced the Jeep on multiple fronts, not only against U.S. forces but against other Allied troops as well, creating extreme pressure on German responsiveness and mobility. Standardization extended to technician training, manuals, and parts catalogs. A technician trained in Kansas could maintain a Jeep in Italy or the Pacific with the same skills and procedures, creating a uniformity unparalleled in military history. These production and standardization advantages not only increased combat effectiveness but also significantly improved the survivability of U.S. forces. Units could move rapidly, concentrate forces where needed, supply troops, and evacuate casualties efficiently. Jeeps could be converted into ambulances, transport vehicles, reconnaissance units, or fitted with machine guns within hours, depending on battlefield needs. This versatility multiplied the value of each Jeep, while German vehicles like the Kübelwagen, though sophisticated, could not adapt as flexibly and were difficult to maintain under heavier loads or added equipment. The Salerno campaign and the September 1943 Italian landings clearly demonstrated this advantage. Thousands of Jeeps went ashore in the initial waves, allowing U.S. and British forces to traverse mountainous terrain inaccessible to German light vehicles. The Jeep enabled fast movement, effective communication, reconnaissance, and fire coordination, allowing the Allies to respond instantly to German counterattacks. German commanders realized that, while they could design sophisticated light vehicles, limited production capacity and scarce spare parts prevented continuous operations, whereas each Jeep was a reliable, ready-to-use instrument of war. The strategic importance of the Jeep was further underscored during Operation Overlord and the battles in Normandy in 1944. About 20,000 Jeeps were landed in the first weeks, allowing U.S. forces to move faster than German units, which relied primarily on horse-drawn transport and had only a few light vehicles. Each U.S. regiment received roughly 145 Jeeps, while German regiments had only a handful of light vehicles or motorcycles. This enabled rapid tactical redeployment, casualty evacuation, and supply distribution, tasks the Germans could not execute efficiently. The Jeep's versatility, from reconnaissance to ambulance, transport, or armed combat, made it a strategic tool often more impactful than artillery or tanks. The combination of mass production, part standardization, trained technicians, and adaptability created superior strategic effectiveness. Germany, despite technical skill and sophisticated vehicles, could not sustain continuous operations, whereas the U.S. could deploy fleets of standardized, easily maintained, ready-to-use Jeeps. This illustrates a key principle. Production and logistics can outweigh technical sophistication in modern warfare. The Jeep became a living symbol of how American industrial power translated directly into strategic advantage, from North Africa and Italy to Normandy and subsequent European campaigns. Even within German units, perceptions of the Jeep shifted quickly from skepticism to admiration. Many officers reported that, when given the choice, captured Jeeps were preferred over any German vehicle. This led to formal directives on handling captured Jeeps, marking them with German insignia to avoid friendly fire, prioritizing fuel allocation, and training specialized maintenance teams to keep them operational. During the Battle of the Bulge in late 1944, Hitler even ordered Otto Skorzeny to seize as many captured Jeeps as possible for special missions in American disguise, highlighting the Jeep's tactical appeal to the Germans. Overall, U.S. production and strategic planning with the Jeep combined massive output, flexible adaptability, and effective logistics management. The Jeep was not the most sophisticated or heavily armed vehicle, but its ubiquity, maintainability, versatility, and sheer numbers created a strategic advantage Germany could not overcome. Through the Jeep, the U.S. demonstrated that industrial capacity and coordinated production could determine outcomes in modern warfare, surpassing isolated technical advantages. The Jeep became a vivid symbol of American industrial, tactical, and logistical dominance, transforming a small reconnaissance vehicle into a crucial strategic tool that shaped battlefield outcomes and forced Germany to acknowledge that it could not match U.S. production and organizational capabilities. After the war, the Jeep was no longer just a military vehicle. It became a timeless symbol of culture, industry, and engineering innovation. As U.S. and Allied forces began withdrawing from Europe, tens of thousands of Jeeps remained intact, many of which were donated or sold to newly liberated nations, helping stabilize the post-war order and support reconstruction efforts. In Italy, France, Britain, and the former occupied regions of Germany, the Jeep quickly found civilian uses in transportation, agriculture, medical services, and commerce, ushering in a new era for versatile motor vehicles. Its core attributes, durability, mobility, and adaptability across terrains, enabled the Jeep to transition from a military tool to an essential instrument for survival and economic development in post-war communities. The Jeep's influence extended beyond civilian use to impact vehicle design worldwide. From 1946 to 1950, engineers and automakers around the world studied the Jeep as a model for light, durable vehicles that could operate in all conditions and remain easy to maintain. In the U.S., Willys, Ford, and later Kaiser Jeep developed a series of civilian models based on military designs, from the CJ2A and CJ3A to upgraded versions with more powerful engines and enhanced features, all maintaining the original philosophy of versatility, standardization, and durability. European engineers, especially in France and Britain, followed this concept, creating light off-road vehicles for both military and civilian purposes, laying the foundation for the SUV and off-road vehicle market that has become a major segment of the global auto industry today. Beyond industry, the Jeep left a profound cultural and psychological impact. In films, books, photographs, and documentaries, the Jeep became a symbol of freedom, mobility, and American strength. Images of Jeeps traversing muddy Normandy roads or climbing the hills of Italy not only recalled military victories but also reinforced the spirit of resilience, flexibility, and ingenuity. It became an international icon of adaptability and problem-solving, a vehicle that could go anywhere, do anything, and survive any condition, much like the U.S. military's strategic application of it during the war. Militarily, the Jeep's influence persisted for decades after the conflict. During the Korean War in 1950, most deployed U.S. units relied on post-war Jeep models, demonstrating the continued effectiveness of the 1941-1945 military design in modern combat. Many other nations purchased or copied the Jeep to develop their own mechanized forces, from Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines to countries in the Middle East and Africa. Its design became the standard for light military vehicles, laying the groundwork for later models such as the U.S. Humvee and the British Land Rover series. In civilian life, the Jeep also shaped the automotive industry. Willys' CJ model simplified off-road driving and became indispensable for farmers, engineers, police, and explorers. Its durability and ease of repair made it especially valuable in remote areas where other vehicles would fail. In the U.S., the civilian Jeep market flourished, from compact CJs to upgraded wagons and SUVs, creating a lasting off-road trend while maintaining the core philosophy of mobility and versatility. The Jeep's long-term influence extended beyond vehicles to design thinking and production management. The philosophy of standardized parts, efficient assembly lines, optimized logistics, and synchronized technician training was widely applied across other industries. Willys and Ford factories became models for combining mass production with flexibility, influencing aerospace, other military equipment, and the global civilian automotive sector. Scholars and logistics experts studied the Jeep and its production network as a case study of how industrial power could determine wartime outcomes and generate peacetime competitive advantages. Throughout the 20th century, the Jeep continued to evolve while retaining its core values. By the 1970s and 1980s, with the rise of modern SUVs, the Jeep remained an irreplaceable symbol of rugged, versatile, and powerful vehicles. In the U.S., a Jeep culture emerged, with off-road clubs, racing events, and vintage Jeep preservation, establishing it as more than a vehicle. It became a symbol of exploration, freedom, and the ability to overcome any terrain, reflecting the very spirit forged during World War II. Today, the Jeep is more than a military or civilian vehicle. It is a global icon of innovation, durability, and adaptability, demonstrating that intelligent design and efficient production can transcend time. Its influence stretches from European and Pacific battlefields to civilian markets worldwide, and continues into the 21st century with SUVs, off-road models, and electric variants. The Jeep's legacy is not only measured in production numbers or battlefield achievements, but also in how it reshaped thinking about vehicles, industrial production, and culture, from war to peace. Looking back, the journey from a small, urgently designed military vehicle to a global cultural and industrial icon exemplifies the perfect combination of smart design, superior production, flexible strategic use, and lasting influence. From the battlefields of Normandy and Salerno to post-war rural and urban roads, the Jeep remains a vivid representation of adaptability, mobility, and enduring strength, proving that a well-designed vehicle can change the course of war and shape the future of industry, culture, and society.